everybody, to our training today on language development. The training today is brought to you by Joint Early Learning Ideas, or also known as JELLY. So today we'll be talking about a very brief overview on language development, specifically how we learn it and how we teach it. Our objectives for today will be going over how we understand language development and its stages. We're also going to take a look at the different steps that we do to teach children language, as well as learning practical and effective strategies to promote language development within our young kiddos. And then at the end, we'll finish off with really identifying some delays that are commonly seen in these age groups, as well as areas of concerns. And we'll give you a little bit of info on where you can find more information regarding any of the topics that we discussed today. Today's agenda is going to include overview of language development. We'll go into the different stages so we really understand that language is a layer and we build upon each layer. Teaching steps of language as well, supporting, like I said, and then at the end, going over language delays so you guys have an idea of what we're going over. And of course, one of the most important parts of today is going to be meeting the trainers. As you can tell, my name is Jennifer Briseño, and right here with me, I have Ellie Mast. Here, Jennifer Briseño and Ellie Mast are the founders of Joint Early Learning Ideas. I am a licensed clinical social worker with experience in child welfare, 0 to 5, as well as in education, working with professionals in the field. And here we have Ellie Mast, has over 10 years of experience. She's my partner in crime, excellent early childhood care educator, and I'll let her kind of introduce herself a little bit more.
So along with Jenny, we're the founders of Joint Early Learning Ideas. We're going to give you guys an overview of language development. Like Jennifer said, we've been working with adults in the field of early childhood for a long time. Jennifer is a licensed clinical social worker, and myself is an early childhood specialist. So thanks, Jennifer, for that great introduction, and we'll let you carry on.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Ellie. So language development, it's a key area of development for children, and something especially in young children that is essential and important. And it's also one of the areas that we see a lot of support is needed, or a lot of questions are had, or maybe you're not sure as to what milestone needs to be reached. The thing we want to look at in order of language development is the different areas and the different types. We have expressive language and receptive language. These two are actually the bigger parts of language when it comes to children. Receptive language being the understanding or the comprehension of language, which is essential. Something that you do want to know about young children as well is that they are going to have a substantial more receptive language than they will have an expressive language. And just like receptive meaning understanding, expressive language is going to be the use of the language, using the language, right? Either through speech, sign, different forms of communication, what that is, right? To communicate their wants, needs, and thoughts and ideas. Okay, so those are two sets of the kinds of language that we have. Receptive language is usually what comes in first, then we're getting that expressive language. It is essential to understand, like I said earlier, that children always understand, especially babies, way more than they can speak. So it is important. That's something we talk about. I know a lot of times we like to use like a lot of the baby talk, which is fine, but it's also important that we are using a lot of that vocabulary and those words, because children at this point are already starting to learn. If we're looking at brain development during this time, it is such a critical and period for them to be learning from the ages of 0 to 3 and 0 to 5. Anywhere between 80 to 90% of their brain will be developed. So it's key to get that language in during that sensitive period as well. If not, it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to even be able to go on to the next stage. As I said previously, each stage of development assumes that the preceding stages or the next stages, the previous stages have been successfully achieved. So Ellie's going to talk to us a little bit about what that looks like when we're not hitting those milestones, kind of a little bit of a case study of what it looks like when children aren't hitting, the 3 months at the cooing and gurgling, or 6 months the babbling, or, at 2, 3 years old doing the 2 short sentences. So Ellie, I'll let you.
Thanks, Jennifer. And so Jennifer talked about the sensitive period. Language development has the sensitive period about the age between 2 and 6 years old, where language is really going to grow at an exponential rate. This is when it's ideal for children to learn multiple languages. They increase their word count by a drastic amount, more than any other time period in their life. So sometimes what happens if they don't learn this language by a certain time period, that now comes the critical period. So there's a famous case study of a girl named Jeannie. She was neglected and there was abuse in her life. And we found her at about the age of 10, 11, 12 years old, the county system did. By then, she had not learned language. So the critical period for language is about 13 years old, somewhere right around where puberty starts. If you do not learn language by that critical period, you actually are unable to learn language in the appropriate way. You lose the grammatical components of language. You're able to eventually communicate with some nouns and verbs, but overall, your understanding of that language and your ability to express and receive that information is drastically cut and reduced during that critical period. So the sensitive period is going to be the time where you can learn the most amount of language, and then the critical period is when you have to learn it by. So language development is going to be really key in those first 5 years of life. So now we're going to talk about the stages of language. Like Jennifer said, development is incremental. You have to do things in steps. The very first sound that children give us in language is going to be cries. The baby cries to communicate their dislikement, or maybe when they're tired, or they're sleepy, or they're hungry. All those things are a form of communication. And then we, of course, get cooing as well during that 0 to 6 months, that early infancy, where they make little sounds like ooh, ah. And so after that, we're going to get lots of babbles. Those are repetitions of usually consonant sounds, and some oral motor, like sticking their tongue out, maybe doing raspberries, like. So all of that is going to be working towards building their muscles in the mouth, so eventually they can use words about the year mark. 2 to 3 years, they should be using combined words like hi friend, bye friend, and then of course short phrases by preschool age. So now that we know how language is developed in children incrementally, you also can take that information and we can figure out how to teach children language. So the big thing about language is going to be social learning theory. Children learn language socially. They learn it because they are exposed to language. In the example we gave earlier about Jeannie, she was not exposed to language, and thus she did not learn it. The most important components that you need to learn language is imitation. So one way we can build up imitation is through making sure children can copy other things that we do. You can start off with actions with objects. Can you shake this rattle? Can you grab this bear? Those are all going to be really simple imitation things that children are expected to do before they're able to imitate something so complex like language. And then, of course, we go into gross motor imitation, fine motor imitation, because it requires a little bit more fine tune of the muscles. And then oral imitation. Those are going to be those oral motor things like sticking your tongue out, blowing raspberries, making pop sounds, or clicking your tongue. All that imitation is needed before they're able to imitate something like language. And then, of course, we start to get vocal approximations. Can they say something close to the word bottle? Maybe baba, right? And then eventually that will become sophisticated and they'll be able to give us actual words that are repeated back to us. And then, of course, auditory discrimination is going to be the other component. Can they hear the differences in that sound? So those are some teaching steps that we use to help children teach language. It is an ABA strategy, an applied behavior analysis therapy technique, and it is highly effective with children 0 to 5 years old. So let's talk about how to support language development. You can do this in a ton of different ways. Baby sign language is a great way to introduce children into language and being able to let them communicate their needs. So as we mentioned before, like in the teaching strategies, gross and fine motor skills are much easier for children to perform than an oral motor skill, such as producing a sound. So if you can have a child sign for more, or maybe say thank you, all done, if they want to eat, those are much easier for them to be able to communicate to you than actually saying those words like more, thank you, eat, please. That's a great alternative to giving them some words right away when you're still working on teaching them actual verbal accusations. So in addition, you can read to them. We all know reading is a great thing. We also have these things called pride skills. Pride skills are a great way to positively promote children's language. We actually have a series on pride skills in our teacher-child interaction training. So if that's something you wanted to learn more on, you can check out our website. And then, of course, the best way to build language is to play with your child, but in a child-directed way. So what we're going to do next is we're going to show a video that teaches you what child-directed play looks like versus what teacher-directed play looks like. We want to make sure that if we're working and teaching on language, we're not using teaching questions that are focused around teaching a different skill other than language. So let's take a look at this video and break it down a little bit more for you guys.
You're going to try and do it exactly the same way? Yeah. Sure. Wow, you are concentrating. Maybe I'll have a go as well.
Is there an eraser?
Probably. Shall I look at you? Is that an eraser?
Yeah, that's an eraser. It's double eraser. It's got pencil sharpener and here's the eraser.
Sounds like you really like that one.
I do.
I like how you got a tiny bit wrong and then you erased it and fixed it up. You are so careful with your drawing these days.
Yeah.
Drawing the eyes.
Oh yeah, we should do the eyes first.
You think you should do the eyes first, huh?
Yeah. Maybe second.
You should think do them second?
Yeah, after the head.
Okay.
Actually, I'll just restart the whole thing.
You're going to restart it all, are you?
So what we just saw there was child-directed play. It's super important when you're teaching language to do it in a child-directed play setting because we want these children to be receptive to what we have to say. So how did you think this boy felt during their interaction? He felt supported. He wasn't stressed, right? He felt enthusiastic and maybe proud of the work he had done. So he was probably receptive to whatever the instructor was trying to give him, which was praise, maybe some language. He did things like repeating back what he said, expanding on things that he said. And so now let's take a look at how that interaction would look and how less receptive the child is to intaking information such as language in this next scenario where she becomes a little bit more teacher directed.
Okay, so how are we going to do it? Now, what should you do with the eyes, do you think?
I just don't know how to do it.
Well, just try and think about what eyes should look like.
I want to do exactly right.
No, you can't always do things exactly right. Let me teach you how to do an eye. Okay, you turn around like this, one eye. Are you listening? Are you listening? You need to get this eye here. Look how it goes. See, that's like an eye, and then you put like eyelashes like that.
That one, it's like straight, but kind of.
Well, just kind of, it doesn't matter. Just do however you think, like that.
And so during the teacher directed play, you can see the child got frustrated. They were likely not receptive to what the teacher was saying, and they really felt bad about the work that they were doing. So one thing to keep in mind is that you did see this as like a school-age child, but this concept of child directed play, it's valuable across the board for all ages. We really want to make sure all children, when we're talking to them and providing them language, that we're doing it in such a manner that is child directed. Okay, so now that we looked at how to use child-directed play, during that, we want to give you some strategies to use while you're doing some child-directed play with your children or clients or in your classroom. This is the types of language. These are different words that you would give your child to promote language development. So we're going to go over a couple of them using the example on the screen that you see in front of you with the bears. So attacked is going to be a very simple use of language, and it's simply labeling bear. That would be an example of tack using this photo. What are those? Those are bears. You can do it with anything around the classroom. This is a door, this is a crayon, table, chair. It is one word that labels it. Now we start off with tacks because nouns are actually the very first words that children will learn, and they're easy to comprehend. And so tacks are a great way to help children who are still in approximations or who are using just one word at a time, and you're trying to expand their vocabulary. In addition, once they become like preschool age, you can use things like descriptive language. Red bear, little green bear, and now you're putting 2 to 3 words together. You can also do stuff like questions, asking them non-teaching questions, but instead questions that are related to promote language, such as which bear is your favorite? Choices is also a great way to promote the language. It's a wonderful behavioral redirection strategy as well when used effectively. And then of course, narration is a great one to use for children. It's great to use like when you're doing stuff, such as you're driving and maybe you might be narrating what you see around, or you're narrating maybe what you're doing if you're doing laundry or fixing something outside or mowing the grass. All those different things you can talk about out loud to just provide language in real time of what it is that you're doing. And then, of course, emotional and pretend language. Pretend language is really going to be a personification of objects, right? When you're playing with dolls and maybe the doll is talking, or you made a Lego robot and the Lego robot is talking, it's saying like, I'm a robot. And so those would be pretend language. Emotional language, of course, supportive language, such as, I'm so proud of you. It looks like you're feeling really sad. Our yellow bear is really excited. All of those would be examples of emotional language. So we've kind of given you guys some strategies about what to use to promote language in children, but sometimes there's a concern. And so Jennifer is going to talk to you about how to identify those concerns and then what to do if you have a concern regarding language development.
Yes. So this is really the key point to a lot of the things that we get questions about, or we're getting asked for support in, is a lot of language disorders or issues with identifying those delays. One of the couple of things I really want to point out is some of the developmental delays you want to look out for, maybe some key red flags, maybe some areas of concern. Again, if by age 1 or 2, there is no babbling, there are no gestures, they're not responding to speech, very few sounds, things like that, that is a big concern. Again, if you're taking your child to the child well visits, these are things that you want to be talking to your doctors about, especially by the time they're hitting the 6 to 1 year mark, if they are not making those sounds, if they're not trying to communicate with you in gestures or any way at all. And as Ellie had mentioned at the beginning, also looking at that oral motor function, right, at the ages of 1 and 2, 2 and 3, and seeing if they can do those things that they should be able to do, right, like the brr and the raspberries and all of that stuff. So if you're seeing that they're having a hard time, with their oral motor or even anything to do with the tongue, that's something you're going to want to get checked out as well. Okay. Another big thing is by the time if they turn 4 or 5 and people are not understanding their speech, they're not able to say words, if strangers can't understand them, or they're not having word sentences or those phrases, those short sentences, that's a really big concern. I usually say by the time a child, if they're 2 to 3 and they're not saying those 2 short word sentences, right, like I want, give me that, those are concerns. If they're only able to make what Ellie said are approximations, those are concerns. If by age 2 or 3, they're only doing approximations, that's something that you definitely need to go and talk to your doctor about, or reach out to other resources, which I'll talk about at the end. Another thing is, because it is key and imperative to get these language delays identified as soon as possible, because of how language it works. If a child is not getting that first milestone, it's going to severely affect the next one. It is such an issue because of the fact that we're not screening children as much as they need to be screened. So if you have a concern, if something's not right, ask your doctor to screen them. Like I said, I'll give you some information on where you can get screened and all that stuff, because again, fewer than 1 in 3 children currently in the state of California under the age of 5 have received timely developmental screenings. So that means 1 in 3 are children that are getting screened. So there's 2/3 of children that are missing out, falling through the cracks, and not getting identified early enough, not getting those supports early enough so they can get the support and get the language, whatever that might look like, whether it's sign, whether it's, vocal, all that stuff, whatever it is, they need to get that support. Again, 8 to 9% of young children suffer from speech and sound disorders. And sometimes I understand as parents, we think, I understand them. I know, we want to give them what they want. We can definitely anticipate those needs. And that's something you want to pay attention to as well. If you're having a concern with your child and their language, if they're not communicating with you, how much are you anticipating needs with that child as well? So with that, I do want to say that although I know it sounds really concerning, there's a lot of ways to identify delays, and I don't want to leave you guys scared. There are areas that you can go to, screenings you can do. One of the biggest screenings that is done that is pretty familiar here in the county are ASQs. So as I said before, if you are going to your doctors, ask to get an ASQ, or ask them to send you where you can get an ASQ as well. If you actually go onto our website, we will be able to offer you more information on that as well. One thing I did forget to mention on the previous slide, I apologize, was the reason why it's important to really identify is not just for the children to get the support, right, as I said, but they're going to have a lot more difficulties later on. So some of the things that you're going to see that they're going to be having difficulties is not just like this obvious socializing with peers and getting that joint attention from people, but it's also going to be struggling to communicate with you as their parent, caregiver, guardian, teacher, educator, whatever that is. They may have difficulties being understood, expressing their thoughts and needs, which that's the key thing I like to highlight, is that a lot of time when there's a language delay, it's when what ends up happening is these children are seen as troublemakers, or we see a lot of behavioral issues with them because they're not able to use that, as we said, expressive language to really say what they're feeling and what they need. So that turns into a lot of anger, to a lot of ways that they don't know how to express those emotions appropriately. So it is important that, we identify these delays, because if not, it is going to impact their lives continuing forward, not just, like I said, with peers, but also with you, because if they won't be able to communicate their needs, and having that relationship with you. So it's important that you have a system of how that's going to happen. And like I said, if you actually go onto our website, which is on the last slide, which is jellyideas.com, you can definitely go to our resource page. And we have a couple of websites listed that you can go to see where you can get assessed. Again, within the county of Riverside, the IRC, which also serves San Bernardino County for the Inland Regional Center, and we'll have a couple of other sources as well. Or if you have questions regarding anything we talked about today, any of those subjects, or if you wanted more information on anything that we talked about today, or if you wanted a training regarding anything that we talked about, please go ahead and email us at info@jellyideas.com. Or like I said, check out our website. We have plenty of other services, not just trainings available. So please check it out. Really covering all behavioral, social, emotional needs of children 0 to 5. With that, I also want to let Ellie say a few words to say goodbye as well.
Yeah, thanks for joining us for this training, you guys. Visit our website and email us if you have any questions. We're here to help. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to hearing from you all.